Overwhelmed with online, or just wanting to learn more about how you can build a successful business amidst all of the self-appointed gurus, big buzzwords and empty promises? The Breaking Digital podcast by Doyle Bueller tells you exactly what smart entrepreneurs need to know to escape the clutter, get clear of the confusion, and pass the bullshit of building and growing a successful business online. It's about digital leadership and delivering the best value for your business online to your audience. Now, here's your host and author of the book on digital leadership and online marketing, The Digital Delusion, Doyle Bueller.
Hello and welcome to Breaking Digital, the podcast for smart entrepreneurs wanting to become true digital leaders in their industry and to own online. I'm Doyle Bueller, and I am so excited to be bringing you a special guest today. I'm really looking forward to helping you learn more about what you can be doing online and helping you to do it better. And if you have any comments throughout the program, please feel free to connect on Twitter at Doyle Bueller with the hashtag #OwnOnline. You can also find the resources that we talk about, as well as the podcast for download on iTunes or thedigitaldelusion.com/podcast. All right, let's get started. Hello and welcome to Breaking Digital, the podcast where we're talking to digital leaders and digital influencers around the world. Today I've got a very special guest all the way from England, Thomas Power. Welcome, Thomas.
Good evening. Hello, Doyle.
Hi, thanks for coming on to the program.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So tell me a little bit about yourself. You call yourself a teacher, not even a coach, that sort of thing.
Well, I'm 52. I've been working since 1980. So I've been working for 36 years. I've got 3 grown-up children. I've left the house. And I teach a lot of CEOs how to look good online. I sit on a number of different boards as a board member, a non-executive independent board member. I work with a lot of startups. And I like to spend a lot of time listening to people's point of view and trying to understand how to communicate their point of view to the market. I'm very sensitive to what people say. I'm very sensitive to words and sounds and shapes.
And what are you most famous for?
I'm probably most famous for building eCademy with my wife, Penny. We built that up to 650,000 members. It was the first social network for business. We sold that to an insurance company, so I'm probably most famous for that. I've met probably 20,000 people worldwide through eCademy. I've been to 60 countries. I've done a lot of books.
Yeah, and where do you call home?
Home is a little town called Farnham in Surrey, about an hour outside of London.
Excellent. Okay. So you mentioned you like to let or help CEOs look good online. So how do you do that? What are they looking for to be good looking online?
Okay, so most CEOs are quite nervous of LinkedIn and Twitter and YouTube and all these social networks because they're worried about making a mistake. So a lot of them choose to do nothing. And choosing to do nothing is a strategy. It's obviously the strategy of nothing. And obviously you're very safe if you do that. Increasingly, though, CEOs are using social media to communicate with their employees. And I notice a lot of them are launching employee engagement points and systems and weekends away and prizes and so on. But it seems to once they get over their nerves, their issues around confidence and skills, and it's mainly confidence and skills, then they start communicating with their employees and then their suppliers and their shareholders and their customers. But my experience, even in 2016, most CEOs are pretty terrified of social media. So I try and ease that pain.
Well, why do you think they are scared of that? Is it a generational thing? Is it a technological thing?
Yes, some is generational. Some is technological. They don't have the skills. They don't know how to use the apps or the computers properly. But another thing is that they want control. CEOs like to control everything. They like to control their staff, their suppliers, their shareholders, their money, their profile, their calendar. And once you go online, you and I both know that you can't really control anything. And so giving up control is a big fear. So choosing to do nothing becomes keeping control.
And are you surprised by that? Because like you said, it is 2016. We've been online for what, 20 years? Where is that fear coming from though?
Well, I think a lot of the CEOs I teach are CEOs of publicly listed companies. And if you have shares on a public stock market, and having sit on a number of those boards, you're paranoid about making a mistake. And you're paranoid about misleading or misinforming shareholders or analysts. So I don't know if you remember the Andy Grove book in the late 80s, early 90s. Andy Grove, who built Intel. His book was called Only the Paranoid Survive. And I always love the title, Only the Paranoid Survive. But when you're a CEO of a publicly listed company with shares on a stock market, you become hyper paranoid. And so avoiding social media is a big plus. Because you can't upset anybody, you can't make a mistake, you can't be abused, you're not in front of the market for customer service, shareholders can't get to you, disgruntled suppliers who haven't been paid can't get to you, disgruntled employees can't get to you. So if you stay off these things, then you're safe. And because public markets are so brutally disciplined about misleading shareholders, as we've seen for the last 10 years with all sorts of different companies, it's easier to not do it because of the paranoia.
But is that helping their business, though, considering where we are?
I don't think so, but I'm empathetic to the fact that they've got to adjust to that shift. And so I don't like to force anybody into doing it until they're ready to have a go. And a little bit like learning a sport, skiing or tennis or cricket or swimming or football, you have to start small and practice and build up to the big game. You can't go on to the big international circuit at any sport until you've had years of practice. And I'm very sensitive to CEOs, men and women alike, to listen to their story and journey, so that they don't at any time feel rushed or pushed or cajoled, because I don't think that's right. Just like a child learning a sport or a child learning a subject, learning how to use all these social tools to me is like being a child learning how to read a book. And we all go back to being 5 years old and remembering how frightening that was.
Scary at times too.
Very scary. And you don't have any control over what people say about you, your company, your wife, your children, your husband, your staff, your suppliers. People can say whatever they like. And I'm not keen on that side of the internet, that fact you can say whatever you like and it's freedom of speech to be abusive. But it's a fact of life that people can say to you anything they wish. And I think it's quite cruel, but it's obviously very scary if you're a director of a public company.
Yeah, so I guess in that case, like Inaction is probably the best policy. But do you feel that they're playing a little bit catch up though? Because a lot of the other public companies, like, let's be honest, not all of them are sort of in that same state. Do they feel, pressured because of sort of the digital culture that we're part of?
Well, you see, if you think about the leading companies in the market, if we take Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook, if we take Tim Cook at Apple, if we take Sundar Pichai at Google, if we take Jeff Bezos at Amazon, really, if you look closely to the dates, they only all started using Twitter in the last 12, 18 months with any form of conviction. So if they're the chief executives of the cutting edge Silicon Valley companies that are publicly listed last year, you can't really expect the mass market of CEOs to be on the case in 2060. because they've only just started using it last year. Now, I know there are exceptions like Bill Gates and Elon Musk, but those sort of guys are really rare. Michael Dell at Dell Computer Corporation. There aren't really many CEOs who've been on it for years. And most CEOs don't take a lot of interest in LinkedIn and Facebook beyond their business profile or their family and friends. To me, the real brave life jacket that people put on is the Twitter life jacket. When they go on Twitter and start to be themselves, like Mark Benioff at Salesforce, who I think is exceptional. And Mark's been at it for a number of years, but it's still taken Mark 2 or 3 years to get any good at it. And he's one of the best CEOs in the world. So inaction is an option.
No, well, that makes sense. And perhaps my perception then is a little bit different, thinking that, well, if you are a CEO, then you should be sort of leading that. And again, obviously, it's dependent on the industry and the niche and that sort of thing.
Yeah, but I think Dor, the worrying word there is should.
Yes.
Because we should be taller, we should be thinner, we should eat less, we should drink less, we should exercise more. These are all shoulds, but we don't do those things. And so, whilst you should be on Twitter for all of your stakeholders, I think you can't swim in a swimming pool until you've had some swimming lessons, because you can easily drown.
Yeah, no, for sure. So how do you teach that influence then? How do you teach them that digital leadership to say, hey, you can do this. This is kind of your starting point. This is what you need to do or address. How do you move them through that process?
Well, the first thing I do is I spend a lot of time getting to know them personally and professionally. I ask them about their professional career. I ask them about their personal life. I ask them what are the big successes in their careers. What are the big failures? What's gone wrong in their personal life? What's gone right? So I really like to get to know them very, very deeply. I like to get to know their husbands, their wives, their dogs, their children, their pastimes, whether they're into cars or tennis or cycling or golf or yoga, their diet, what they like to drink. I really like to get to know them very, very well first, and that takes a few months. Then I try and spend a lot of time with them identifying what really matters to them in terms of words, what real influences they've had in their lives in terms of words, people, phrases, sentences, books, travel, conferences, concerts, music, whatever it might be. But what are the real moments in their life that really nudge them, push them forward? And then I translate those into words for them and help them write their blogs and help them write their tweets and help them write their LinkedIns. I would say it takes 3 or 4 months for them to get set up. And then it probably takes another 6 to 12 months to get their confidence. And they say, I'm all right, Thomas, I can take it from here. And I go, well, off you go then. Call me if you get stuck.
Do you give them a report card along the way?
I'm not really. I mean, they can measure everything in terms of money or deals or Klout scores or followers or transactions or outcomes, and I'm not really a big numbers guy in that sense, because when you're on these social networks, you're building your brand, your personal brand, and you have to be incredibly sensitive to what people think you are, what you say, or what you stand for. And if we just look at the American general election that's going on right now, at least the warm-up, the hors d'oeuvre.
Yeah, we're not even there yet.
We're not, we're having the cocktail drinks before we even have the hors d'oeuvre, and people have formed huge opinions about Sanders or Cruz or Trump or Clinton before they've even walked into the restaurant based on their performance online. So I think you have to be very careful with numbers until you've truly defined your brand and what you want to be known for. And I don't think you can define what you want to be known for overnight. And of course, these things change. As humans, we change. We change our points of view as the decades go by. And so, I don't know. I think you gradually evolve online, and you gradually get more and more of you to the surface. But I think a lot of people are still wearing a mask online, and in the end, you remove that mask. But in the early days, you wear that mask as some kind of comfort.
So how do you define then that personal brand, and what steps could someone take to sort of get through that fluff and remove that mask? Is it just time? Is it experience? Is it what is it in your mind?
Well, I definitely believe in time and experience, and I think those are both. Confidence comes with both of those, but to me, an awful lot goes into the preparation at the beginning. Big conversations at the beginning about who you are and who you want to be, and are you absolutely sure that's who you are and what you want to be known for? Because when you look at a chief executive, and I know many of these chief executives on Twitter myself personally, and I've met many of them, and I've been to many of their homes. There's a big difference between when you visit someone in their home and when you see them at a conference on a podium. And so it's really important to spend time discussing who you think you are versus who people think you are. And shareholders think of CEOs very differently to employees. Suppliers think of CEOs very differently to employees and shareholders, and customers think of CEOs very differently. So I think you have to explore what people perceive you to be, and then spend quite a lot of time, even with your spouse and even with the children, making absolutely sure this is who your mum is or who your dad is, before you go out into the online world and start to express that through all these social channels.
It seems that you have like a very personal approach to that. Is that sort of because of that, as a result of it, or is that what you're trying to move people towards? Is, hey, take a more personal look at who you are, what you do, what you're about, and that's kind of how you can brand yourself from a personal perspective.
Yeah, I think, in answer to your question, Doyle, I think it's evolved to be very, very personal because I've seen the train wrecks that people have had online through lack of preparation or lack of skills. And I've also, because my wife and I have coached and taught some of the most famous people in the world, some of the wealthiest people in the world, even royal families, and politicians around the world, you realize you have to be very sensitive, ask your questions very carefully, and take time receiving the answers. And if you don't receive the answer that day, maybe you'll get it another day or another week or even another month. And I think an awful lot of the process is spending time asking questions, giving people space to verbalize their answer, listening to that answer, and then discussing that answer to see whether that is really accurate. Because I think humans benefit hugely from the listening, questioning, and verbalization exchange between one another. And there's a huge amount of respect given around listening and verbalizing exchanges that has to happen over a long period before people they take a big breath and say, oh, you know what? I think I'm ready now. And 3 or 4 months may have gone by, and there's a big sigh, and I'm a big fan of sighs, by the way. SIGHS,
Okay.
not SIZE. I'm a big fan of size in this because I think people need to take a big breath and say, you know what, Thomas, you know what, Penny, I think I'm ready now. Now, what are we going to do first? Are we going to do Medium? Are we going to do Twitter? Are we going to do LinkedIn? Are we going to do YouTube? What are we going to do first? And I've put a lot of effort into the intimate relationship with these people because I want to give them total respect around who they are and what they've achieved. And I know huge success comes at huge personal pain, and I like to explore that pain, have all of that verbalized before we decide which elements of that we do and don't share. So yeah, it is a very personal service. It is a very personal, intimate service. Yeah.
No, it sounds like that. It sounds like a refreshing sigh approach as well, because currently we're taught, well, maybe not taught, but there's a lot of people out there that are coaching people, that you need to broadcast, and you need to broadcast everywhere and every how and that sort of thing. But if you take a step back, it's actually more of a listening exercise than a talking exercise, because then that's how you can sort of get in tune with what are other people saying and how are they saying it and how are they expressing themselves, which can
yes, I mean,
you.
I certainly believe from a broadcast point of view, you've got to be on all the channels. So I do think you've got to be known across all of the channels, wherever your audience is. I see all these social channels as like TV channels or magazines in the 1970s. If you wanted to be known, you had to be across them all. I don't see the social channels as any different to that. But what I do think is quite hard is to be consistently you across them. And I noticed over the last, well, not the last 25 years, but certainly the last, say, 10 years, that people were inconsistent across different social networks as I observed them. There was a different person on Facebook to LinkedIn to Twitter to a blog. And I became suspicious, and I was thinking, well, you can't be different because of the channel, because that doesn't make sense.
But that's a lot of people are encouraging, is that you can't talk the same language on the different channels, right? And I
you
agree.
might not be able to talk the same language, but you still need to be you.
Be yourself, yes.
I mean, obviously, you would behave differently if you're in the Ritz-Carlton to if you're in a sleazy pub in Detroit. But I would hope that you would still be you, whether you're in the Ritz-Carlton or in the pub, whether you're in the football match or whether you're yachting with the Queen. I still hope you would be you. And my worry with all the different channels is, well, it's not really a worry because I like the fact that there are many channels, is I think the hardest thing is defining how you want to express yourself and what you want to be known for. And if you can hold on to that for many years. Because when you look at characters who've just died, like David Bowie, who was obviously a genius of reinvention, self-creation, and brand. He was many characters and many types of musicians and many types of sound during his life. But underneath, you could sort of feel the David Bowie-ness there. But he reinvented himself many, many times, as is the nature of the music business, that you've got to rebrand and reinvent. But I think when you're a business brand, one of the things about business that is really important is consistency, because people like to get used to you over time, like they get used to a brand over time. And so being you for long periods, I think people struggle with.
But why is that? And again, is it because of the norms that we've kind of established in the last 5 years, Facebook years, whatever you want to call it? Like what's causing us that? Is it our own sort of discomfort of talking? Is it our own discomfort about social media, all that kind of stuff? Like, what do you think is causing this?
I think a lot of it is information overload and messaging overload. When you pick up your smartphone in the morning and you look at all the messages on all the apps, a lot of people show them to me and say, "Oh my God, where do I start?" Do you start with family and friends? Do you start with business messages? Do you start with Twitter? Do you look at your voicemail? I mean, I think a lot of it is just pure messaging overwhelm. And you're a different person if you're talking to the children than if you're talking to the chairman. So I think pure overwhelm. I think also choice of information. Everything is nothing now. You can blow some people up. You can murder people on the beach. There's terrible crimes committed all over the world all the time, in the Middle East, in Africa, in America, in Syria, in Paris. And nothing seems to shock the world anymore. The world seems desensitized. And so, because there's so much volume, I think the human mind and body have become confused. And therefore, they find it hard to consistently communicate the same messages. It's something about information overload where I think the problem has occurred, and that, of course, is only going to get worse.
And are you sort of frustrated by the clutter? When you're, say, helping a CEO become established, obviously you have to deal with it, but are you frustrated by it? Like, what kind of makes you angry about online and social media and everything else?
I'm not really an angry person, Doyle. I don't really get angry. I'm too happy to get angry.
Good.
I've always been a happy person. So frustration. I do like. Do you know Clay Shirky, who's written a lot of books and is a New York and now a Shanghai professor?
No, I don't.
I do love his writings and his speaking. I think he's super. He talks about the issue. The issue is not about content. The issue is about filters. And I'm very, very good at filtering information in newspapers, on the radio, on the television, on Twitter, on email. I'm very organized and very good at filtering data. So I don't really have frustration with volume.
Okay.
Because I'm very well set up. But when I see CEOs on their smartphones and I see them stumbling around with apps and stumbling around with filters and stumbling around with their email, I just think, well, all these guys need is a few lessons. I'm a big tennis player, and I know if I don't practice, I'm not very good. And if I do practice, I am very good. And the same is true on your smartphone. You've got to practice, and you've got to spend hours slimming down the number of apps you have, maybe reducing it to just half a dozen that you really truly use and ditching all the others, and then really getting the filters really set up very carefully on all these different apps. I do think that's very important, because overload upsets and disturbs. And yes, you're right, does create anger in many people. Not for me, but in many others.
Well, that's okay. We all handle it differently. But yeah, establishing some filters certainly can help you sort of get down that clutter and making sure that you're focusing on what's really important. How do you measure success, Thomas? Like you talked about it earlier, like you don't necessarily keep a scorecard, but one of your well-known things is the Klout 70. Do you still believe in that as a measurement, or?
Yeah, I do. I really do. And I take, funny enough, Joel, I have to take massive abuse around that. I'm all over the world at conference after conference about, are you the Klout guy? Why do you believe in the Klout 70 score? And all this sort of stuff. And I don't know. I mean, I could stop talking about it completely and just ignore it and forget about it. And I don't do it to make people angry.
Well,
or anything like
why
that.
do you do it then?
I do it because I truly believe that someone who's got to that level of score is world class. For a number of different reasons. One, that they've learnt the game of Klout, and that is a game, but they've taken the time to learn the game and get good at it, which means that they understand the online world is a lot to do with gaming, as we've seen with Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook, who's clearly very much better at playing the game than Reed and Jack at LinkedIn and Twitter. So I like the fact they've spent time learning the game. I also think the Klout 70 score defines people who are very serious. And anyone who has a Klout score over 70 or more, is very serious about their online presence. And I believe in something that I call the law of stepping forwards, that the right people will come forward. And so anyone who has a score in the 70s or the 80s or even the 90s, I can't get into the 80s or 90s myself, is truly world class at their online presence. And since the objective is to create brands, and the most important decision in any business is brand, ahead of product and ahead of everything else, it's how people feel about the brand before they even consider what they're going to do with that organization. Then anybody who can take the time to get to Klout 70 or more truly believes in brand. And that's why I think it's hugely valuable what Klout have created. And I'm really quite saddened that they've had such a struggle and such a journey of pain and disrespect and even abuse for Joe, the founder, over the years. But I still believe in the concept of someone who gets a 7 out of 10 is very good online.
And how could you make that system better then? Or can you?
I think it's very similar to the same problem that they have with Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Unless you have physical events, online brands won't really be successful. What makes Apple so powerful as a manufacturer are those shops. We're now hearing Amazon opening 400 bookstores.
Yeah,
we're going to see the Facebook shops. We're going to see Twitter shops. We're going to see LinkedIn shops. All these internet brands, once they're on the high street, once they're on the main street, once they're actually physically present, then they'll be true brands. And I think the big issue for Klout is it never went offline. And if it had had physical events and physical debates, the engineers and the geeks, remember, geeks are not users and users are not geeks. Geeks never really know how their product is used, and users just complain how geeks never write things the way they should be. And neither has the skill of the other. And the only way you can really understand a product is through a physical experience. What we used to call in the 70s a user group, but what will become a retail environment, because technology is going to move all the way back onto the high street, onto Main Street, and we're going to go into stores and learn how to use it all these apps, all this new augmented reality and virtual reality stuff. And all of the social brands are going to be on the high street, on Main Street, and you're going to learn how to use all these things in physical stores.
Yeah,
because it's just too hard to learn online, and all this nonsense people talk to you about. Learn it all on YouTube. Learn it all on a learning management system. This is just utter nonsense from people who've never spent time with a user, who think you can learn everything off a machine, and you can't. The reason why people love coffee shops and love restaurants is because they learn in those environments. It's not just about the coffee.
Or not because they have free Wi-Fi?
Well, the free Wi-Fi helps. But I do look forward to technology returning to Main Street, returning to the high street, and us all going into places to learn how to use it with our peers, and at the same time having a coffee or a gin and tonic or whatever it might be whilst we're learning, because all of this new stuff that's coming, this flood of the Internet of Things, blockchain, virtual reality, augmented reality, autonomous car. We're just having this technology thrown down our throats at such a speed that nobody can keep up with it, and you need a place to go to talk it through. Even if you choose to do nothing, you still need a place to go and talk it through. And you need to talk technology through, and talking it through on a TV show or on YouTube is all very helpful. Reading about it on a blog or on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn, it's all very helpful. But eventually, the only way you learn is to physically interact with another human and say, oh, Doyle, that's how you're doing it. Oh, well, if you're doing it like that, maybe I should copy that way. Or because you're doing it like that, oh, I know I prefer doing it like this. Or would you like another coffee? And that's where we're going. We're going all the way back to
the touchy
a retail technology learning experience with one another, which is why those physical events like Burning Man, where they all go out into the desert and try and be cool for a week, it's because they want the physical experience of learning together. And even Burning Man is a lot to do with technology and music and cutting edge and Silicon Valley. And if you like, Burning Man is the beginning of the retail technology experience coming to every high street in the world, and it will happen in our lifetime.
Oh, it's fascinating. Really, really intriguing. So, I mean, we'll probably see the day when we can sort of connect that offline, with the online, and from a measurement perspective, from a leadership perspective, that can certainly go forward quite nicely. And yeah, you can see these things merging back again towards that type of concept.
The French have a saying, Doyle, you having a German surname, but the French have a saying, plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose.
Same thing, yeah.
The more things change, the more they stay the same.
I'm also French,
Oh, well, then plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. And whilst numbers are important, followers are important, tweets are important, likes are important, subscribers are important, shares are important, the number of times people engage, all of these things are important, but nothing compares to physical engagement with one another. And the growth in conferences and physical events continues. The physical book now has increased massively in volume. The e-book is in decline. And we're seeing a huge return to the television, the radio, the book, the physical event. And all of those things you'll see return to Main Street on the high street over the next 10 years. As effectively you have like a Starbucks environment, but for business and networking and learning, so that we can be as we want to be. We want to be humans together, online and offline, with technology there as well.
Yeah. Would co-working space be kind of moving towards that, where you're kind of working collaboratively?
I think co-working and WeWork and Regis and all these sorts of things, I think those are a bridge. But my only worry about those things is they're all a bit sort of geeky and a bit cool. And I'm not anti-geek or anti-cool or anything like that. But what people want is a high street experience. People love their coffee shops and they love their restaurants and they love their bars. But at the moment, all of those experiences are inadequate from a technology point of view. You struggle to get on the Wi-Fi. It's a pain in the ass looking for the password. They have to go and reboot the router. Technology on the high street is poor. It's a little bit better in airports, but generally it's poor unless it's a big hub airport.
Yeah, no, definitely.
We've still got quite a long way to deliver true technology offline. I know that seems like an oxymoron, but we like to be human together, and I think co-working is a bridge from online to working together before we return to the physical high street, and everything becomes a place of learning and networking offline as well as online.
Yeah, no, excellent. One final question, Thomas. You mentioned that physical events are becoming more and more paramount in terms of, getting that physical contact, but and context for that matter. But if you could sort of, for somebody wanting to increase their digital leadership, increase their influence online at this sort of juncture in time, what would you recommend?
Oh, Doyle, it's such a tough question that I'm almost too old for that question, aren't I?
Okay.
I mean, it would be wrong for me to say there are not great places for them to learn on YouTube and on Facebook and all of these platforms. There are great online schools from multiple gurus around the world. You could study all of Gary Vaynerchuk's material, Joel Combs' material, Brian Salisa's material. There's probably a couple of dozen very high quality gurus that people can study and even go on their courses.
So that's, if I may, then that's what you're saying is get taught by some good people who know what they're doing. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think if you're going to study, if you want to learn tennis, wouldn't it be lovely to be taught by Roger Federer?
Yes.
Now, obviously, he hasn't got time to teach us all how to play tennis, but I would go to the people who are like Roger Federer. And it seems to me there's a Roger Federer now for every platform, whether it be Snapchat or WhatsApp or LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter. There's a Roger Federer for each of these. Probably more, probably a couple of dozen Roger Federers for each platform. I would go on their programs and their courses, which seem to be a mixture of online and offline, and take their version of what they think is successful, in the same way that people go on a Tony Robbins course, or I used to go on a Brian Tracy course in the 80s when I was a kid, and learn their version of events, and just recognize it's their version of a technique, but also recognize that there are many ways to hit that ball over the net other than Roger Federer's way. And so take everything with a pinch of salt as just a method. One of the things I'm not keen on all of these platforms is all these 10 ways, 11 ways, 21 ways, 9 ways, 7 ways. There's sort of 8 ways to scratch your balls. I don't like formulaic recipes, because I don't think that works in the long term. I think what really does work is really deep, intimate relationships with humans over long periods. That works. And I don't think you can do those things at scale. And so I think you have to find a teacher who takes care of you their way and recognize that there's another way other than their way, and choose a teacher that you really relate to, either through their Twitter or their Facebook, their LinkedIn, their YouTube, their Snapchat, whatever it might be, and think, well, I'll go on Doyle's course, or I'll go on Robert's course, or I'll go on Penny's course, or Brian's course, or Charlene's course, and learn through them in the same way that when I was a kid, we went on a Zig Ziglar course, or a Brian Tracy course, or a Tony Robbins course, and we had to take their version of what was mainly about the psychology of the mind, or goal setting, or beliefs, and before we had technology. Gary Vaynerchuk is a fantastic teacher, but he has an abrasive side that you have to accommodate in your listening. I'm not a big fan of formulas and recipes.
Mm-hmm.
I like everyone reads a book a different way. Everyone absorbs knowledge a different way. I like to be very sensitive to each person. I don't know. guess it's a long answer to your question, but choose the teacher you like the most.
Okay. Well, that's really good. Thank you. And what's next for you?
Well, Penny and I really want to bring technology and learning to the high street. So Penny's created the business cafe, and we're going to be franchising that around the world. And we're testing that right now in 3 towns in the UK. And we'll be testing that for the next few years, and then we're going to franchise it to every town in the world before we die.
Oh, fantastic. That sounds brilliant. So taking all your philosophies and all your ideas and putting it together and putting it out there.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Starbucks for business.
Yeah.
It's kind of e-academy on the high street, really.
Ah, okay.
And we're taking our time bringing it to market because we want it to be absorbed when the market is ready to absorb it.
Yeah, fantastic.
And I don't know whether you saw, you wouldn't have seen this in today's budget. The UK budget was on. The Chancellor, the guy who looks after the money in the UK, was talking about the number of people who are over 65 who are physically fit and working. And it was a huge number. It was something like 1 million people in the UK, maybe 2 million. And I was just so pleased that, because I remember when I was a kid, if you were over 65, you were practically dead.
Yeah, no kidding.
You know, you were like put out to grass, and you'd be mowing the lawn and going to church, and you'd be preparing for being dead.
Yeah.
I was quite excited. I'm not sure it was 1 million or 2 million in the UK. I can't remember the number. I was just excited that there were that many people who are physically fit and working. And I want them to have a place in the society where they can learn all this new technology and are not left to drown. Because I think Silicon Valley, to me, is drowning us in technology and not having enough sensitivity to teach us how to use it all.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a huge problem, especially from, like teaching, right? People have to understand and know how to be able to use it.
Yeah, I just feel the VCs and the geeks in Silicon Valley are just throwing these mousetraps at us and say, get on with it, virtual reality, augmented reality, Internet of Things, blockchain, just
do it.
Just do it. And I feel like we're being overfed.
Yes. Yeah.
Without any empathy around teaching. When you're teaching children, you take 15 years, 20 years to teach them, and then they go out to work after university. But they have 15 to 20 years of education first. Now we have to learn a new mousetrap every month. It's ridiculous.
We're in trouble.
It's out of control. I want to see more. What's the word? A shift or empathy or sensitivity by Silicon Valley towards education and caring and learning and sensitivity to the market, because to me, an educated market can absorb any product. But if you overfill an animal, it'll stop hunting. And I feel like we're being overfilled with technology, and it doesn't seem right, that to me. And I'm not saying I want them to slow down. I don't want them to slow down, because I know that they love knocking out. These engineers love creating these new mousetraps. I just want them to put the education for everything in every university and school and town in the world, so people have time to absorb and enjoy all these new things that they're inventing.
Yeah, no, fascinating. Fascinating talk, Thomas. I really appreciate the conversation, your insights, your perspective. It's been absolutely fantastic and enlightening for myself as well. Where can people find you online? You're on Twitter. Do you have, what's your main URL?
On Twitter at Thomas Power is probably best. My cell phone number is there. My email is there. So probably at my Twitter is best, at Thomas Power, ThomasPower.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you again for joining me. And you'll be able to get for all the listeners out there, we'll be able to get a transcript as well as some documents from Thomas that he's given us in terms of how do you actually get to Klout 70 and a few other tips and tricks there. So you'll be able to find those on thedigitaldelusion.com/podcast. Once again, thank you, Thomas. I really appreciate your time. And
thank you, Doyle, for inviting me.
You're very, very welcome. And we'll see you guys online. Thank you very much for listening to Breaking Digital, the podcast for smart entrepreneurs wanting to become true digital leaders in their industry and to own online. If you have any comments on the program, please feel free to connect on Twitter at Doyle Bueller with the hashtag #OwnOnline. I would really appreciate it if you could share this podcast with your network, as I'm sure they will get some value from it for building their successful business online as well. You can find the resources that we talked about, as well as the transcript and full podcast for download on thedigitaldelusion.com/podcast or on iTunes or on SoundCloud. I'm Doyle Bueller, and I will see you online.
Thank you for listening to Breaking Digital with Doyle Bueller. While he goes and makes a sandwich, you can find all of the notes, links, and details on this podcast by visiting thedigitaldelusion.com/podcast. Go on and click that now. www.thedigitaldelusion.com/podcast. I'll definitely click that. If you'd like a free copy of the book, The Digital Delusion, How to Overcome the Misguidance and Misinformation Online, just send an email to doyle@thedigitaldelusion.com. See you online.